so they'll have this to record. And one of my guys is actually volunteering to take the badges of people, take the sign people in downstairs. So he's not going to miss anything. All right, good. So we're live, and yeah. So I guess if while I'm opening a new Unity, um, tell me about the AR interface. I guess how did it start? The conception, is it did Unity create the XR team with the AR interface in mind? Is it something that kind of originated after the team came together, or kind of something about a little bit about the timeline?
No, so there's a distinct difference between AR interface and the stuff that I talked about at UBC.
Mm-hmm.
So the AR interface was just a quick thing that was put together in a couple of weeks for our talk at Unite Austin. So it's not really like something that we're supporting going forward. We're just like we're kind of just making sure that everyone who's already using it has kind of like a way to still keep using it. But we're encouraging people to start using the new AR subsystems that we have in 2018.1. Obviously, since those are like really brand new, it's kind of going to be tough for people to switch over immediately. So in the meantime, whoever needs to get apps out in the immediate future should probably still use AR interface as kind of like a fallback. But that is AR interface is not what we see as a way forward, because it's because of a lot of the things that I mentioned in that GDC talk. There's a kind of like an explanation of why we're going with this the set of AR subsystems. The main thing is that it's something that we've kind of planned out and really taken care to kind of implement in a very deliberate manner to be able to future-proof it. So like other SDKs that are coming out or future features that are coming out can easily be integrated into this new AR subsystem.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it too is you getting your hands on a lot of that with the AR data from various providers, right? Like so the point cloud, for example, from the AR kit and the AR core, and essentially creating. I mean, that's some of the interesting things, right? So, can you tell us a little bit about what is? I think it's about to launch here, pretty good. Especially what in terms of what in Unity space, the coordinates that you get back from like the point cloud, is that what scale, what space, what is the
Yeah. So basically, everything you get back in from both ARKit and ARCore are in like real world space. So like if you have points, they are basically when you start an ARKit session or an ARCore session, you basically start at 0, 0, 0. So like at a world origin, that's considered the origin of the world at the point at which you start and the orientation you're facing. So if you get a point, a feature point at like 1, 1, 0, 0 or something, that's like 1 meter away from you, essentially. So it's actually in meters, in real world meter scale. So all those things kind of similarly, everything that you get, the planes and everything that is provided in 3D space is coming in that real world coordinates.
So I saw in the one of your AR kit, I think the early the AR kit implementation in Unity, the one that is, I'm pretty sure the one that on the asset store is the same one that you have in the Git repo. And it has something about it has one of the examples where you can reset the world space, right? So the default world space is usually the world space of the user. but to make it what more usable or even more standardized, right? Would you sometimes want to create a different origin or a different world space origin, and kind of explain what the idea of creating that example was, and what cases were you thinking about when that was kind of conceived?
Right. So I think so. If you look at AR interface and pretty much the stuff, the new AR subsystems that we're talking about, all of it, the AR subsystems are kind of exposing whatever the AR SDKs like ARKit and ARCore have as a basis, and allowing you to just tap into those particular APIs. But then if you look at those APIs, they're pretty low level. So you have, they provide a plane, they provide point clouds, they provide some basic stuff that you want to use. But as a AR developer, you usually, or a content creator, you usually want something that works at a much higher level. An example is something like what you mentioned, which is like you already have a scene. Let's say you have a city scene, and you want to start in a specific point on that scene. You don't want to move the scene around. So what you need to do is basically set it up in such a way that you can basically end up in any part of the scene by moving some kind of transform around. And then basically, there are other utilities that you need to help you, start up a session or stop a session, or pause a session, or do other interesting things like add video to your session or whatever. So all those kind of things are kind of not really provided at the base level, or it's not easy to implement in a Unity scene. So what we do is, both in the AR interface and in the case of the new APIs, we provide a layer on top of the AR subsystem called AR utilities. And in the case of AR interface, it's already in that layer where it gives you kind of like higher level utilities to use as an AR content creator, that you can basically use it to do things like, that are normal things that you would normally do as to create AR content. So think about something like the setup of, you want to start in a specific spot in your scene. That is something that is provided through a thing we call AR rig in the new system.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically similar to, in AR interface, we had a concept of a rig as well. So essentially, what it is it's a transform that you put your camera and every AR, anything that's created in AR under that, and then whenever you can move the rig around, and so the camera is still in the same spot. Like it thinks it's at 0, 0, 0, but you're moving the whole coordinate space of the rig around, so that even though the camera at 0, 0 is at 0, 0, 0 when it starts, the rig could be placed anywhere in the scene. So you basically start wherever you want, in the scene. So instead of moving the scene to conform to your, instead of moving the scene to the particular point that you want to start the experience at, you just move the rig to the particular point that you want the experience to start at.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, I think I was going to get to that a little later, but that is, yeah, absolutely one of the most interesting things that I've seen in your talks was with AR. You have these severe limitations traditionally with Unity of doing it traditionally, of putting a game object onto an AR surface, whether, making it not able to be static, and then the nav and the light baking, that's not possible, and then There's physics, right? So if
Yeah.
yeah,
those are all of those things are limitations. And then this rig also allows you to like scale as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big thing because, for example, like you don't necessarily want your scene, which is probably modeled, in real world scale, to actually exist in your AR experience as real world scale. You actually want it to probably, shrink down to your table or to a surface that you want to put it on, or something of that nature. And you probably also want to have the right orientation, so you should probably be able to rotate it in such a way that it fits the right place on the table and it's in the right direction. For, let's say you're playing from one side of the scene, then you want that camera to actually show from that particular side. So all those things you can control using that AR rig, and that's one of those things that we provide as like a higher level functionality that you can easily control all those things. There's obviously caveats to those kind of things as well, because you have to now kind of keep track of two different scales. Mm-hmm. So the AR rig has now, since you've scaled it, anything underneath that is at a different scale from whatever real world scale you had before, right? So if you do actually create something that is in real world scale, you have to kind of keep track of two different scales. So there is a bit of a complication there, but that's it's something that's useful anyway at a nominal level, right?
And a lot of that is basically handled by Unity. It seems like a lot of times with, as a developer, people would ask me, why do you always use Unity? And a lot of times the answer is that it kind of can do everything I've ever needed to be done, right? It can
yeah. I think also, like, if you look at Unity, I think a lot of like it is a pretty good tool for AR, but it just accidentally happened to be so because it was a good tool for games, and a lot of the things that we do is basically being able to put real-time 3D on the screen very easily, right? That's basically its strength. Unity's strength is doing real-time 3D editing, right? And that's probably one of the biggest strengths it has. And so it happened to be that AR naturally happens to need this as a big tool, right? So Unity happens to be the right solution for those kind of things. So that's why you see a pretty high percentage of AR apps out there are made with Unity, because it's easier to create and it's easier to have all these. Unity has an ecosystem with all these people who are familiar with it and who are able to create in it. But the other thing we want to try and do is also make it so that even people who are less technical than our current Unity developers are able to add, are able to create AR, AR experiences very easily, AR content very easily. I think a lot of it is I think we're at a point where there's a lot of ideas about AR. People have a lot of ideas on how to do things or how they would use AR, and not all of them are necessarily technically, proficient, or they're not technically savvy enough to maybe run Unity kind of out of the box. So we need to provide the tools that would allow those kind of people who may have a germ of an idea as an artist kind of thing, or someone who's more, not necessarily an artist, just someone who has an idea that they can do something in AR, and all they want to do is kind of get some assets from the asset store and place them in specific ways and arrange them in that way, and all that stuff should be something that doesn't need very technical abilities, like being able to program in C# or any of that sort. So that's what we're trying to do, is provide kind of as high a level as possible for someone to be able to get into this.
No, it's excellent, and it's also with these same tools, like you're creating the best practices in using these tools, right? Like for example, with the Object Scale Club, where the first rule is do not scale, right? And it's very important. You would think of somebody just starting out would start scaling objects pretty rapidly, right, and start breaking nav meshes, break some of the functionality that Unity, requires. I think there was even a talk. I think at GDC that Jono did a talk about the point. What is it? Decimal point floating point accuracy, right? So if you get to certain scales, everything breaks in Unity, and so you definitely are, by creating this kind of easy workflow and the best practices of how to create AR and basing them on the way things need to be done in Unity. So yeah, one of the questions I was going to ask, especially because you're exposing some very high level information that has traditionally been this kind of cross platform is not traditionally been available. Not many people have pursued bridging Apple and Android, right? Those have been two very separate kind of ecosystems, and especially with the ARKit and ARCore, I mean, it's very logical. It's very, it's almost inevitable that somebody would go and try to combine both of these advanced AR capabilities into one sort of framework. And then so for the AR, essentially for the AR, with the AR utilities, or how would you, when you expose the point cloud, is it a one-to-one with the positions of the point? Do they use the same measurements? Is there any major differences between the two kind of platforms? Because both of them have the plane. I guess Apple's now released the vertical first, but Google has talked about the vertical planes.
Yeah, so let me talk a bit about kind of the thoughts behind how we think about this. I don't know if I can present onto the screen here. Let me see what I can present here. Am I trying to present on this?
Should be able to. It's a screen sharing. It's a green. If you mouse to the left side of your screen, it should give you a little menu and the screen sharing. Yeah.
I'm going to share my other screen.
Yes, I should have had this slide, but yeah, perfect.
Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is basically kind of like the new architecture that we have, and the main goal with this architecture, make sure we still have the benefits from what we had in AR interface, but also now provide kind of like some other benefits that the AR interface did not have. So this is kind of like the slide showing you what the benefits of the AR interface were, and kind of this showing that this actually has the same benefits. And then this is kind of like the slide showing you all these other things that you get as well, in addition to, like you get the tight integration with Unity, the high-level API for subsystems, those kind of things. So all that to say is so if you look at the ARKit and ARCore parts here, that's just two of the SDKs. We're planning it in such a way that you can actually have as many different providers as you want them, right? So all these, like ARKit and ARCore, just happen to be the two first ones that we've implemented. So if you look at this AR subsystems, kind of like a quicker, kind of like if you want to magnify that, let's say. So all these subsystems, here's an example would be like a plane subsystem. The idea with a subsystem is it's just the data of a specific kind of data that AR is providing we need to convey that from the SDK or the hardware up to the application level. So the subsystem is just a way to convey that up, right? And the provider is the one that provides it, like let's say SDK or ARKit or ARCore will provide like plates, let's say, right? But the idea is that all these, each of these subsystems are going to be granular enough, so they're going to be really like just ways of providing data up to to the application, right? So we'll provide planes, we'll provide cameras, we'll provide input systems. And all these providers can provide each of these. So it doesn't have to be the same SDK. So it could be like, this could be like ARKit, and this could be, it could be some new camera provider, which works on iOS. It doesn't have to be, what I mean is it doesn't have to be the same kind of SDK that's providing all this data. The idea is just to have these granular sets of data that you can mix and match, right? And the other example I gave was like, you could have like a fake input provider, for example, just a software-based input provider, which you can use for testing, let's say, that you want to use. Okay, if there are a bunch of inputs that you want tested, you could just have it, read off a file or whatever and provide this data through here. The idea is that you could just mix and match these subsystems in such a way that, you can create all kinds of setup, right? So you'll support ARKit, you'll support ARCore, and you'll even support possibly future platforms that haven't been, that are not out yet. But you can just write your application to this level where, you say, oh, I'm going to write an application that, for your example, you're saying something like, okay, one has vertical planes and the other has oriented feature points. So in that case, what you do is write an app that basically says, okay, do I have vertical planes? Okay, then, no, first of all, I try to hit a vertical plane. If I don't hit a vertical plane, then I try to hit a feature point, an oriented feature point. If I don't get an oriented feature point, then I fall back to just a regular feature point. So if you look at it that way, you can just say, I've already written the app that actually does all this fallbacks. So whenever ARKit now comes with oriented feature points, it should be able to use that. And whenever ARCore comes out with vertical planes, we should be able to use that without actually, redoing your app. You just need to rebuild it with a new provider, and you're done, right? So you basically
you make it sound so easy, because I feel like, and I mean, it must be, right? Especially if you have the real data. But I see that it seems like the task is so much more difficult, right? Like, for example, with the camera provider, right? And I mean, it's completely utopian the way you explain it, right? If you can, let's say, for example, use the Canon SDK, and there's a bunch of interesting stuff with Canon that they have these like really small modular cameras that have a nice SDK, and then you can essentially use the ARKit super advanced tracking through, with third-party cameras. But I noticed even very recently that, for example, Vuforia has a FOV adjustment, right, where you can adjust the camera's field of view, right? And ARKit, every ARKit implementation I've seen so far, it does not offer that, right? And it would make sense because it changes your position, right? I mean, the way you lay it out, it makes perfect sense, but it feels like in reality, there's these systems are so much more tightly integrated and can't just be swapped out, right? Or what do you think in terms of, just for example, a 3D space versus camera, right? Camera FOV would change the perceived 3D space and whatever the 3D space. I mean, or is it all completely normalized in the AR subsystems? Is that part of the magic?
No. So the whole idea is, obviously some of these things kind of rely on each other. So as an example, you probably, like in the case of ARCore, the camera subsystem and the plane subsystems are probably very closely tied together. So if you choose one, you kind of have to like select the other as well. So, but there are instances where you can basically, have like a software substitute for some of them, or have some kind of remote substitute for some of them. They're not meant to be used kind of like, I don't think, I mean, we've thought about subsystems as completely independent of each other, but there might be subsystems that can be used in conjunction with each other, but also subsystems that can be used separately, right? So for example, the input subsystem is completely independent of the other two right now. But there might be a point at which provider, for example. So part of it is also we're going to have some kind of descriptors for these subsystems on the providers. So the provider will say, okay, I am providing planes, and in my in the planes that I'm providing, I have like vertical planes, I have horizontal planes, and I have, basically those two kinds of planes. So you have some information about what is getting provided by the provider. So you can basically in your app just specify, oh, these are the features that I need. These are the things that I need to have work, right? And then at the point of actually making them work together, you have to figure out, okay, if I choose this provider and for planes and this provider for camera, I have to make sure that those two work together properly. But that's at kind of like an application configuration level rather than at like a application development level, right? So at the application development level, all you care about is what are the features that I want. Like I need vertical planes, and I need the camera subsystem. So I need these two things, and then at the application configuration level, that means it might be the editor, for example. You might say, okay, I want to choose this this plane provider with this camera provider. So you have to just make sure that those two work together before you can put them together, essentially.
No, it's beautiful, and I mean a lot of the best parts about all this is really that you can play with it, right? So with Magic Leap giving you the SDK and the kind of the emulator system, now you can create your Unity projects and see how it would work. And literally, I mean, the fact that you're releasing a lot of this stuff just creates a development environment of real experimentation and real hands-on usage, right? And that's really, I think, where a lot of the games, well, not just games, but a lot of the applications come from, right? Is being able to see what, like what you mentioned, the best use cases of AR, right? A lot of people, you can have this concept in your head, but when you actually try it using AR, it may not be the best use case, right? So by trying, failing, trying again, you can really create, essentially the future of the AR ecosystem. And this is such a huge part of it. I'm sure you can see it, but the fact that not everybody on Earth knows about this yet is mind blowing.
So the thing is, also like even emulators and remotes and all those kind of things are basically, again, these subsystems are plug and play, right? So essentially, we should be able to plug in these emulators in here, or so that you can iterate much faster. And then in the last moment, you can say, okay, when I'm actually going to when I want to actually try publishing this or not publishing, or just building it to a device, then I change the providers to be, the device-specific ones, kind of thing. So again, that helps you to iterate faster and to fail fast and to find find your fun essentially faster. So I mean, these are just some of the subsystems that we have currently. The idea is we're just going to extend some of these all these subsystems and make, you know, like create new ones as needed and make them, like, again, we want to make them granular enough that we can, you know, easily implement most of the stuff that we need to, essentially.
Yeah, it's perfect. I mean, and literally just making it work, right? Not having to deal with learning each individual SDK and their offerings, and having this kind of unified approach for just making 3D objects and 3D spaces and exporting them into the world. I mean, that should be easy, right? And the hard work is actually making it easier. Right? So it's absolutely beautiful. I'm still getting this error. So one of the things we like to do in our community, especially, so I started this NYVR meetup probably a year or two ago. Actually, 2 years ago from it's been since Unite Boston, where I was kind of given the idea by like Pete Moss and some of the original kind of Unity guys with doing the VR. And you know, one of the things we like to do is kind of go through some of the issues, right, and do a lot of walkthroughs, right? So maybe we'll do in the actual meetup, we'll do a quick call with you. Probably go through on a high level some of the slides that you went over right there, and kind of talk about this architecture, right? The future of AR authoring. And then if whether you have time, if you have time, it'll be great. But after that, we'll kind of do a little hands-on. So we'll actually download some of this code, actually walk through a little bit of it, and build something, right? So some of the really cool things that you have is like the Unity editor, not the Unity editor, the what was it? The Unity, the remote, right? The ARKit remote.
Yeah.
Which is super cool. I mean, that is for testing, for debugging, for developing. That is fantastic. And the with the little animal, the
sloth.
The sloth. Oh, that sloth that's probably the most in the forums. Like that sloth is the like the most. I see that sloth in every post and every page. That sloth is.
Oh yeah, that's because I use that as my
avatar. Yeah. Before I knew who you were, I just saw that sloth before. I didn't even have the background as to what the video was, so I would just see the sloth everywhere. And then I saw the video, and now it brings like huge context to it.
So actually, that's being used quite a bit within Unity as well, because it's going to inform we're trying to improve. Again, the remote is. It was again, that was also kind of like a pet project that I did in a couple of weeks. The ARKit remote, and I kind of extended it for face tracking as well, but. Again, something that they're using as a model to kind of try and make it much more complete and much more bulletproof and robust, make it better essentially. So there might be it might not be the same thing anymore. Like it'll be part of this AR subsystems and like the future of Unity, but what I did earlier kind of informs it. So that's yeah, it's been a good. I think that was one of the big things that was very useful early on. And I mean, when I actually had gone into the labs to work with some developers on the first versions of ARKit before it was announced, and that was one of the first things that nearly every developer asked for. Like, how do we iterate fast in the editor, right?
Sure.
We can't really get this information. So how do we get this information back? So once I got out of the lab and ARKit was released, then I kind of worked on it for a bit just to try and get that information. And it turned out that was really useful for a lot of people. So I'm pretty happy with that particular product. So even though, and it's informing a lot of people now, and people are already using it for other things. So things that I didn't even have any idea that it would be useful. So so there's a lot of interesting things that are happening with that.
Yeah, I noticed one of the things that with the AR subsystems exposes is sort of essentially with the camera feed, right? So um, did you dog food it? Did you use the same kind of did you use the same kind of AR utilities to create that, or how did I've never actually created stuff Unity tools within Unity. Is this the same kind of process, or?
So are you talking about the ARKit remote?
Yeah, yeah.
So the ARKit remote. So I originally wanted to use. There was something called Unity Remote. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but essentially
sure.
what it was you could download it onto your phone, and then use that to kind of connect to the editor, and then you'd see the game playing on your phone as well as the editor, kind of thing. And everything was happening on your editor, and the phone was just displaying what was happening, right? And the touch input was coming from the phone, but the rest of it was happening on the editor. So that was kind of like the model which I wanted to follow. And in fact, I wanted to add this AR stuff to that, but the only problem was that would have made so this ARKit plugin was external to Unity, so it didn't. So I didn't want to be dependent on Unity code. So the Unity remote actually depends on Unity code. So you need to have like the editor code is what actually the code in the editor within Unity is what actually sends information back and forth from the Unity remote to the editor, kind of thing. So I didn't want to use that let's say the tight coupling with Unity. So what I did was I just wrote an editor script that basically did a lot of the stuff. So it's not part of Unity. It's an editor script that lives outside of Unity, and that's why that's how I was able to do that, get that across. The disadvantage obviously is probably not as fast, but I was able to get it up and running pretty easily, and I can support any Unity version because it's just an editor script. Right? So that's an advantage of that.
No, it's really fantastic. I think there's been some videos on editor scripting, and it's the next part that I want to dive into. It's incredibly powerful.
One of the things that someone was showed me recently with it was you can basically use it as like a cheap animation studio. So if you have an iPhone 10, you can basically record yourself doing some facial animations, and then that while you're doing the facial animations, you connect it through the ARKit remote to your editor. You can basically save all that, all those animations as a clip, an animation clip, and then replay it at some other point, right? Like once you've saved it as an animation clip, it just lives in your project. So you can basically create a bunch of these clips with facial animation data, and then you can just replay it whenever you want.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, that's I was just showing that that was part of. I'm pretty sure that's either one of your talks with one of your colleague had showed that, or maybe one of the talks right afterwards for GDC. And yeah, I mean,
I think Dan Miller might have shown something like that.
Yeah, it's a real business use case. I mean, there's so much facial animation, the cost associated per minute and per animation, and if you could just do it naturally with an iPhone app, I mean, like, come on, that's like
all that stuff is. I mean, it's an approximation, but it's pretty It's I mean, it's a good, cheap kind of way of doing animation.
Sure. Well, it's yeah, and it's you know, it's very reusable, right? So having the blend shapes of a character's face in a video game, and then you have that same IP, and you can make an app with it, right? And
Right.
a really fun social media kind of app. And yeah, that's kind of becoming more of the so reusable, right? So if you spend, yeah, it's not easy to get all the blend shapes for a character, but once you have it, I mean, you could use it for everything. And um, how many different facial animations, how many different scenes can you make once you have that created? And that's the beauty of the asset store, the scalability of it, right? Is having these assets that are $10 or $20 that would take you a year of your life to make. So it's really the future of creation. I mean, you're absolutely making these tools that are that enable it, right? So with this, the ARKit remote, a lot of these integrations really make it super easy. For some reason, I'm still getting this error. Do you see my screen?
Yeah, I see it screen. What you can do is, can you go to build settings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I switched to iOS already. I would usually do that beforehand, so because it's so time consuming. Yeah, I'm here.
I can't see your build settings.
Oh no. All right, let me see if I can share the whole.
I just click on player settings. Maybe I can see.
Yeah, I'll switch to the. All right, let's try that. Player settings. Yeah. Do you see it?
Yeah. So you see that bottom? No, don't open that yet. To the bottom, it says, yeah. Try clicking on that.
The Vuforia?
Yeah. I don't know why it's complaining about that.
Let's see if I can actually.
You seem to have some weird stuff happening.
Yeah, that's some of the things we try to do is kind of. 'Cause a lot of times, people run into this issue, and if they don't have a place to turn to a place to turn, they kind of just give up, right? And that's what we try to discourage. Or try to do some of
I think what happened was I think 2017.3 already has Vuforia, has the first official Vuforia support or something. So you might already have Vuforia in there somewhere.
Usually, so with the Vuforia, what happens is when you add a Vuforia, let's say like you go in here, right? You see, so you go into Game Object Vuforia, and when you add a Vuforia component, then it gives you this import Vuforia assets window.
Yeah, right? But there are no Vuforia assets. There shouldn't be any Vuforia assets in there. Can you look in your assets folder? There shouldn't be any Vuforia folder in there.
No. There's this Vuforia configuration and resources.
Why is that there? It shouldn't have been in there in the.
It's in the. It's in the GitHub repo, right?
No, it's not in the GitHub repo. So I don't know how that got there. It wouldn't be in the GitHub repo. There'll be nothing to do.
No, it is. It is though. Let's see.
Really?
Yeah.
Then I should remove it. It's there. No, there is no. That's, I think, from your previous.
Oh project. Yeah, what is that? Oh, so maybe if I just delete that, right?
Yeah.
Resources folder.
That's probably from your previous project or something. Okay, there you go. No?
There's a clean project that I opened, right? But it might sometimes. That's the thing. I think that there might be some with the Vuforia integration, that might be slightly forced in some cases. I think it might hurt. It might hurt some compatibility of some other stuff, but hopefully not. Let's try. I have also of Unity, a slightly older version installed too. think it's 2017.0, 3.0, not 3.1. So I'll try to open it in this.
Yeah, I mean, either one of those. I think 2017.3 is pretty stable.
It's really fantastic. Do you have more time? Do you have to get going? I know it's been.
Yeah, I have to get going. I was just about to say.
All right, so thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you taking time. I will email you if I have any other issues. And essentially, what I'll do for the meetup is I will have some of these things built. Wow.
Right. Yeah, I don't think I'll have too much time. Maybe half an hour or so.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
During the meetup, so maybe we can.
We'll do some high-level stuff. Kind of go over the slides of the AR subsystems a little bit.
Yeah,
because that's super helpful. And then talk about a few of the utilities that you've created. And I guess one of the things I wanted to ask you was more about the community involvement. I know in the last talk there was some talk about the utilities being open source and open for contribution, and if there's a protocol or a format or some kind of precedence where we can contribute to the utilities. I know I have some interesting things that I haven't seen used as often, even in some of the larger presentations. So yeah, I was wondering.
Yeah, totally. In fact, that's certainly the thing that we want to do is essentially open that up to people. We were just careful about like the AR utilities at the AR utilities level. We certainly want to open it up. We're just being super careful about saying that we'll open up the providers, because the providers might have some legal issues to open up. So if it's possible to, we will open up the providers as well, but not necessarily to expect all that stuff to be open. But the AR utilities, certainly we want to open up, because that's where I think there'll be a value add for AR content creators and be able to, like share their learnings essentially of how to use AR in the right way and how to bring higher level, things together in AR. I mean, it's an exciting field. It's just like I can see a lot of things that are coming down the pike that will make a big difference to AR and make AR much more exciting. So.
Well, you're at the tip of the spear. I mean, literally, it's all coming through you in every way. So I mean, all the SDKs, all of the technology. That was I think what I really wanted to close on. Definitely during the meetup is the Magic Leap, right? What would be the best practices now to actually use the AR subsystems to create Magic Leap experiences?
Currently, there is no AR subsystems for Magic Leap. I mean, there's no provider for Magic Leap yet. But as we go forward, we think that we're going to try and put more of these stuff, pretty much all the new platforms, try and put them on. Magic Leap is a new platform, but we've been working on it for a long time, right? So that's why it's not really new to us in that sense. But as we go forward, we're trying to put as many of these platforms under this same AR subsystems, because it makes a lot of sense, because they're going to share a lot of common kinds of subsystems, and if one doesn't have one right now, it will in the future, kind of thing. So it just makes sense to do that.
That's beautiful. I mean, you're absolutely in the right place. Can you wear your Magic Leap glasses next week?
No, I cannot. I cannot. They're still very protective about those glasses. So they only allow certain people to have them, and even within the company. So
you can't even wear them in public, right?
We can't even show them to other people in the company.
Wow. But yeah, it's a great position to be in. Congratulations. So we are all your fans, and we'll be happy to hear from more from you.
Yeah, I mean, this is I mean, this is what I enjoy doing, is basically helping others to get, like, I used to develop games, and that's my background. And I always used to think, you need someone in Unity to kind of, have our point of view and make things, work things out the way we would want them to be worked out. And that's why I joined Unity, to have that, to be that conduit, to be the person, the liaison between like developers and kind of like the development team, Unity. So I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to.
It's absolutely great culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody I've ever met in Unity has been awesome, and I haven't gotten to know you for that long. I missed the Austin Unite. It was the first Unite I had to miss because I had a big project. But yeah, I hope to see you at the next Unites. You're a huge part of it, and I think you mentioned you were at what, Ubisoft or before this?
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, a lot of the history in gaming, to be part of, and to be part of the future is even more exciting, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things in my background that are, like I am very proud of, but I think I'm even more excited about going to, finding out what's coming up down the pipe. And so AR is going to be, AR is an interesting thing. So hopefully we'll see much more of that.
So it really is. I mean, and it's it's the way. I mean, after the Pokemon Go, #1 app in the world for some time, that just says it. That says it all. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. I'll talk to you again next week. There's a Tribeca Film Festival coming up, so we probably will have a small panel after your call. And if there's anybody that you would like to be part of Tribeca Film, or to anybody in New York that please reach out. And such a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you for creating the utilities more than anything. Right? Thank you for enabling us as developers to create some great stuff in AR.
Sure. Thank you, Lex. Take care.
Thank you, brother. Have a good one.